No one on that street expected fear to arrive so quietly. Not the people passing by lost in their phones and thoughts. Not the drivers rolling past without slowing down. Not the men watching from across the road pretending to blend in. And definitely not Steven Seagal's daughter. The night felt normal, too normal. Streetlights glowed softly, footsteps echoed and disappeared. Nothing screamed danger. Then it happened. One wrong step, one lingering look, one moment where instinct whispered something was wrong. She felt it before she understood it. That pressure in the chest. That sudden awareness that safety had shifted. Someone had chosen to follow her. Not by accident. Not by coincidence. They moved closer, quiet, patient. She slowed down. They slowed too. That was when fear arrived, not loud, not dramatic, just heavy. A voice broke the silence behind her. Low, controlled, too confident. She stopped. The street felt smaller now, the air tighter, her phone suddenly heavier in her hand. Somewhere nearby people walked past unaware. Life continued. Cars passed. Music played from open windows. But for her the world narrowed to seconds. Because someone had just crossed a line. The wrong line. And somewhere else, Steven Seagal was about to receive a call. That would change everything. Not with shouting, not with panic. But with a response so calm, so deliberate, so controlled, that it would leave everyone who witnessed it frozen. This was not a story about noise. It was a story about restraint. About timing. About what happens when the wrong people choose the wrong target. Have you ever felt danger before you could explain it? It was a normal evening. The streetlights glowed softly, casting long shadows across the pavement. The hum of distant traffic mixed with the occasional bark of a dog, creating a mundane rhythm that made the night feel ordinary. People walked past, chatting, laughing, unaware of anything unusual. Life moved at its usual pace. Steven Seagal's daughter walked alone. Her steps were steady but relaxed. A small bag hung from her shoulder, phone in hand. She scrolled briefly, music playing low in her earbuds. Her mind wandered through the day's events, completely unaware of the danger quietly approaching. Storefronts reflected the faint glow of neon signs. A soft breeze carried the scent of street food and the faint exhaust from passing cars. The world felt safe, comfortable, ordinary. Around her everything seemed peaceful. A couple walked a dog nearby. Two teenagers laughed as they rode past on bicycles. A man on a bench fiddled with his coffee cup. Nothing stood out. Nothing seemed threatening. But danger has a way of hiding in plain sight. To anyone else on that street, it was just another quiet night. No one could tell that the calm, ordinary rhythm of life was about to be shattered. Steven Seagal's daughter, immersed in her own world, moved forward with confidence. Her shoulders relaxed, her head tilted slightly, listening to the music as if it could shield her from reality. Nothing felt wrong. Not yet. And that's exactly why this moment was dangerous. The most threatening situations often begin quietly. They don't announce themselves with sirens or warnings. They creep in slowly, wrapped in the guise of normalcy. And by the time you notice them, the stakes are already high. This calm setup is what makes everything that comes next terrifying. Because the mind believes it is safe. The senses are relaxed. People let their guard down. Moments like these are deceptive. They teach a lesson the world can feel ordinary, harmless and calm, right up until the moment everything changes. And for Steven Seagal's daughter, that moment was approaching fast. Footsteps echoed softly on the pavement behind her. At first, she ignored them, thinking it was just someone passing by. But then she noticed the rhythm of the steps too close, too steady, intentional. Her heart skipped a beat. She tried to keep walking normally, adjusting her pace. And just like that, the footsteps matched her speed, mirroring every step. A chill ran down her spine. The street seemed quieter all of a sudden. The distant sounds of traffic faded into the background. Her music, once a comforting bubble, felt almost intrusive, too loud in contrast to the silence around her. She instinctively checked over her shoulder. A shadow shifted. And then a voice broke through the night, low, smooth, threatening. "Nice night for a walk, isn't it?" She froze. Her breath caught. The words weren't a question, they were a warning. She turned slowly. Two men stood there, both wearing dark jackets, faces partly hidden by the dim streetlights. The kind of smile that promised trouble. The street, once wide and open, suddenly felt smaller. The air heavier, tighter, almost suffocating. The first man took a step closer, confident. Deliberate, not aggressive yet. Just enough to make her realize she had been noticed. The second man mirrored him, keeping his distance, watching. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but her feet felt heavy, frozen by the sudden awareness of danger. Her phone felt heavy in her hand. The comfort it normally gave her now meaningless. Every step forward, every breath, seemed measured, calculated by them, not her. She tried to convince herself it was nothing. Maybe they were just lost, maybe they meant no harm. But deep down, she knew the truth. Something had changed. A shadow passed across her vision. The sound of the footsteps behind her, and the low whisper from the man, created a rhythm that her mind could not ignore. Her senses heightened. She could feel the tension in the air like electricity. In that instant, every ordinary moment of the evening vanished. The normalcy she had taken for granted disappeared. Her safe, quiet walk was gone. This was the moment where fear became real. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. The kind of fear that makes your heart race, your breath shallow, and every instinct scream run, hide, or prepare. And she understood it clearly. She was no longer just a girl walking down the street. She was the target. Have you ever felt safety disappear in a single second? When everything around you seemed normal? That moment where you realize life can change without warning. Her phone slipped from her hand. It hit the pavement softly, the screen lighting up with the call she had barely realized she was making. The voice on the other end was calm but urgent. "Dad, I think someone is following me." Steven Seagal's eyes narrowed, not with fear, not with rage, but with focus. He knew instantly that this was no ordinary situation. Years of experience, years of training, years of discipline, all converged in that single moment. He did not panic. He did not shout. He did not move hastily. He stood up slowly, every movement measured, every thought precise. This wasn't about proving strength. This wasn't about ego or dominance. This was about instinct. Instinct honed through decades of martial arts, survival, and knowing exactly how to handle danger. As he listened, he visualized the street, the shadows, the gaps between the streetlights, the positions of potential threats. His daughter's voice trembled slightly through the phone, but she was holding on, not panicking, just scared. And that was enough for him to know that he had to act, but carefully. A father protecting his child doesn't hesitate. A father doesn't weigh options once the threat is real. His mind calculates the safest outcome, the path that ensures his child remains unharmed. Everything else, pride, anger, emotion, is secondary. He moved toward the door, calm, deliberate, not rushing, not showing aggression, but already planning every step. He could end this in moments if he chose to. He could overwhelm, strike, or intimidate, but he didn't. Control was his weapon. Control over himself. Control over the situation. Control over the fear his daughter was feeling, even from miles away. He knew that if he lost control, even for a second, the consequences could spiral. But control, steady and unwavering, would allow him to neutralize the threat without chaos. He paused for a second, listening to the street noise through the phone, imagining the position of the men following her. Every instinct screamed the same thing: do not underestimate. Act carefully. Protect first. And then he spoke, his voice calm but firm, almost a whisper: "Stay calm, I'm coming. Just keep walking straight. Don't react." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't instruct panic. He only conveyed confidence and control. In that quiet preparation, tension built, not just for him, but for anyone watching through the story. The anticipation was electric. Every second stretched longer than it should, because the audience knew the danger, the stakes, the potential for disaster, yet Steven remained calm. This is what separates instinct from emotion. Most people react in fear. Most people act too quickly. Most people lose control. But Steven Seagal, he chose control. He chose timing. He chose precision. Because in moments like these, instinct is more powerful than strength, discipline more powerful than rage. And in the distance, the street waited. The shadows waited. The men who thought they could intimidate a young girl had no idea who was coming. A father protecting his child doesn't hesitate. He moves. He calculates. And he ensures that no harm will come, not through chaos, but through deliberate, unstoppable control. If you were in Steven's shoes, would you act instinctively or let fear decide? Steven arrived quietly, almost like a shadow blending into the dimly lit street. No announcements, no loud footsteps, no rush. Every step deliberate, controlled, measured. The men didn't notice him at first. They were too busy smirking, too focused on their own confidence, too certain that this girl was an easy target. They laughed, a low, arrogant sound that bounced off the walls of the alley and the nearby parked cars. They had underestimated him, and that was their first mistake. Steven stepped forward, smooth and unhurried. His daughter's small frame was just ahead of him, unaware of the danger that had been creeping up behind her. With a calm, steady motion, he positioned himself directly between her and the men. Instantly, he became the barrier. The presence of Steven Seagal changed everything in the air. The laughter faltered, replaced by a flicker of hesitation, as instinct, something primal, kicked in. His voice was low, firm, carrying a weight of authority that could not be ignored. "Walk away now." It was simple, clear, final. For a moment the men hesitated, smirking, thinking it was a bluff. Confidence fueled their arrogance. But confidence without caution is dangerous, and they were about to learn that lesson. One of them stepped forward, his movements careless, daring, challenging. A shove perhaps, a gesture meant to intimidate. But they didn't realize that every inch they advanced was being measured, calculated, every action observed, every muscle controlled. Phones came out. People paused. Conversations stilled. The street became alive with tension. A crowd wasn't forming yet, but every witness felt the change in energy. Something extraordinary was about to unfold. Steven placed his daughter slightly behind him, shielding her with the calm precision of someone who had faced far worse. She looked up at him, trusting, still anxious, but reassured by the quiet power in his movements. The air vibrated with anticipation. It was in this moment, the careful pause, the positioning, the unspoken rules, that the shift occurred. The men realized something was wrong. This wasn't just a man protecting his daughter. This was a controlled force of nature. One misstep, one impulsive move, and their arrogance would crumble. The confidence that had fueled them seconds ago now wavered. Fear, subtle but undeniable, began to creep in. They thought they could intimidate a girl. They thought they could overpower the man standing between them and her. They were wrong. The street seemed smaller, the shadows darker, every small movement magnified. In this tense silence, Steven's authority was palpable. The crowd, distant yet close enough to feel it, held its collective breath. Time slowed. Every second stretched longer than it should, because in this moment, the smallest action could change everything. Steven didn't move aggressively. He didn't shout. He simply remained poised, protective, unwavering. The men were forced to rethink their choices. Every instinct screamed caution. And every second, the imbalance of power became clearer. This was the turning point, the moment the street, the daughter, the attackers, and even the audience understood that the rules had changed. The confrontation had escalated, but not yet erupted. The tension, deliberate and controlled, was building toward the inevitable. If you were there, standing in Steven Seagal's place, or even in his daughter's, would you step in and face danger, or freeze in fear? How far would you go to protect someone you love when a threat is real, immediate, and unpredictable? One of the attackers, fueled by arrogance, reached out, thinking he could intimidate the man standing between him and the girl. His hand moved swiftly, confident, aiming to make a mark, to push boundaries, to show dominance. But in that instant, everything shifted. Steven moved once, just once, and that was enough. Not a flurry of punches, not a chaotic frenzy, just a single, precise movement. His body was a study in control. Every muscle calibrated, every step measured. He redirected the attacker's momentum without struggle. The move was subtle yet absolute in authority. The attacker's balance faltered. The confidence that had fueled his arrogance crumbled instantly. Fear replaced bravado, hesitation replaced aggression. The smirk vanished from his face. He realized too late that the man in front of him was not ordinary. That man was Steven Seagal. The street seemed to pause. The night air itself held its breath. Every passerby, every hidden observer, felt the shift in energy. Even the shadows seemed to retract, as if acknowledging the power in the calm, controlled figure standing there. There were no punches thrown, no chaos erupting, no screaming, no sirens, no need for unnecessary violence. Just absolute authority expressed through discipline, precision, and restraint. Steven's eyes held the attacker's gaze, not with anger, not with rage, but with unwavering focus, a quiet warning, a message clear without words: you are out of control. I am not. The attacker stumbled back, trying to regain his footing, trying to reclaim his lost dominance, but it was impossible. The balance of power had shifted irrevocably. The other men froze. The second attacker, previously cocky and smug, realized the futility of their situation. Their plan to intimidate a girl and a seemingly ordinary man had collapsed before it even began. Phones were still out, recording. Eyes wide, mouths slightly open. Everyone witnessing this knew that what had just happened was extraordinary. Steven did not chase. He did not threaten. He did not revel in dominance. He simply stood there, breathing steadily, a calm center in a storm of tension. He leaned slightly toward the first attacker, his voice low but audible enough to echo in the silent street. You don't need violence to end a threat. You need control. The words were simple, but their impact was profound. They were a lesson in discipline, power, and restraint. The attackers exchanged glances, realizing their arrogance had brought them face to face with consequences they hadn't imagined. No one had to scream. No one had to fight. Control had been demonstrated. Authority had been established. The street remained quiet. Even the distant traffic seemed to slow. The world had witnessed something rare. A confrontation ended not by chaos, but by mastery, precision, and calm. Steven's daughter remained behind him, safe, protected, and reassured by the quiet power of her father. Her fear was still there, but it was overshadowed by the realization that she was guarded by someone extraordinary. Every second stretched, building tension, until the attackers finally began to retreat, humiliated but unharmed, aware that they had met someone who could not be challenged recklessly. This moment was not about brute strength. It was about authority. It was about the quiet power of discipline, of knowing exactly when and how to act. It was about proving that control can command respect more effectively than chaos or rage ever could. The audience, anyone watching, felt the weight of that lesson. They saw that real power lies not in loud actions but in deliberate, calculated, controlled movements. And in that street, that night, fear and respect intertwined in a way that would be remembered long after the attackers left. If you were in that moment, standing in Steven's place, could you maintain such calm control under pressure? Or would panic take over? The street was quiet again, but the atmosphere had shifted permanently. The air, once tense and electric with danger, now felt heavy with realization. People began to gather, drawn not by curiosity alone, but by the whispers of what had just occurred. Some had seen parts of it from across the street. Others had captured moments on their phones, sharing them in real time. Sirens approached in the distance. Police arrived, their presence formal, professional, but unnecessary in the immediate sense. The danger had already been neutralized. The attackers, once full of confidence and arrogance, had been humbled. Their expressions told the story better than words ever could: confusion, shock, and an unmistakable sense of regret. They had learned, far too late, that targeting the wrong person, especially the wrong family, carried consequences beyond what they could comprehend. Steven Seagal turned to his daughter. The streetlights cast soft shadows across her face, highlighting the mix of fear and relief in her eyes. "You're safe," he said quietly. No prideful proclamation. No loud statements, just calm assurance. She nodded, still trembling slightly, but understanding, deep in her bones, that she was truly protected. Her trust in her father had been rewarded in a way she would never forget. The lesson extended beyond her. Anyone watching could feel it. The power of restraint, control, and discipline. By morning, the video had exploded online. Every corner of the internet seemed to be talking about it, not because of brutality, not because of chaotic violence, but because of something much rarer: mastery over self, mastery over a situation, and the protection of someone vulnerable without ever losing control. People shared it not for shock value, but for the lesson it carried. The story resonated universally. It wasn't the fight itself that drew attention. It was the calm, calculated way the confrontation had been handled. In a world where impulsive reactions and aggression often dominate, this display of authority and protection stood out. Observers and viewers commented on the subtle gestures, how Steven positioned himself, how his voice carried command without raising volume, how a single precise movement ended a threat that could have escalated violently. Power had been displayed, yes, but without rage. Strength had been proven, but with discipline. And in that rare combination, people recognized a truth they admired deeply: the strongest person in the room isn't the one who yells the loudest, throws the hardest punch, or strikes first. It's the one who protects others without losing control. The crowd slowly dispersed, but the story lingered in everyone's minds. Witnesses discussed it, not as gossip, but as a lesson. Some remarked on how fear can be mitigated by calm decisiveness. Others spoke about the father-daughter bond, the instincts that drive a protector, and the moral clarity in choosing restraint over chaos. The attackers, meanwhile, had been taken into custody, or at least moved away from the street. But the lesson for them was far greater than any legal consequence. They had come into a situation thinking intimidation was power. They left realizing true power is earned through control, not violence. Steven Seagal's daughter walked home with him after the ordeal, feeling safe, shielded, and profoundly grateful. The night had tested fear, instinct, and courage, and emerged as a story of measured authority. It wasn't the fight people would remember. It was the composure, the discipline, and the quiet mastery that made headlines. And for those watching the video online, the lesson resonated even further. Real strength lies in protecting the ones you love without letting anger or chaos dictate your actions. Restraint is more powerful than brute force. Control is more impactful than intimidation. If you believe real strength is protecting others without losing control, type respect in the comments. And tell us, if you had been in Steven's shoes, would you have had the courage to act the same way? Could you remain calm, precise, and in control, even when someone you love was in immediate danger? This story isn't just about action. It's about a lesson that resonates across generations: cultures, and experiences. It's about courage paired with discipline. It's about authority without aggression. And it's about showing the world that true power is silent, calculated, and unwavering. By the end of that night, one thing was clear. Steven Seagal didn't just protect his daughter. He demonstrated something far greater, the extraordinary strength of calm, deliberate action. And that is what made the moment unforgettable.